across the grand spectrums of time and indeed the multiverse. Now, we're going to be discussing a few things tonight, um, a few topics, a few very important topics. Well, three very important topics. The first, the first is going to be People's Populist Press. The second is going to be the Guntgate, Ethan Ralph's grizzled flesh. And the third, we're going to be talking about Nick Fuentes. So let's start with People's Populist Press. I did a stream with PPP a few weeks ago now. It was a great stream. I thought it was fantastic. We had a good time. We had a good conversation. I wanted to talk about, cows. I wanted to talk about Sargon, quartering, V, Mundane Matt, the usual crowd. I wanted to give my hot takes on them and swap hot takes with Triple P. But what happened was that PPP sort of opened himself up, revealed parts of himself that I hadn't known or even thought to consider. It transpired that PPP was a community preacher, a leader within his community for preaching for a church that has very few members and that is some sort of Canadian denomination, the Church of Joshua, I think he said, of Christianity. Again, this was completely unknown information to me, and I hadn't realised that he was from a long line of said wacko preachers. It's perhaps worth saying and noting that this is doubly shocking because this is the fellow that, well, he spread his cheeks live on stream in a bout of post-ironic gayopsery. So it was quite shocking to see that he was an upstanding member of God's tribe. So I had this stream with PPP, and I said I thought it was good. I thought it was quite interesting. We had a good little conversation. I could have gone for a few more hours. I really enjoyed where it was going. He was opening up about stuff that happened during his college years, about how he was attacked by Antifa, and about how he was a sort of a centrist. He'd been misunderstood. He wasn't a wacko alt-righter, and he wasn't a wacko Antifa. He was, in fact, sort of Sargon tier, Coach Red Pill tier on the political spectrum, and he was just there to sort of be a bit of a pointy stick to wave around and try and bring back a bit of reason to everything. That was his explanation for his behavior, for his shenanigans on the stream I had with him. And like I said, I thought it had the seeds of being maybe a kind of prototype for a long-running Godwinson PPP podcast. I thought this was it. I thought we were going to have a really great time discussing things in a very autistic way. And I hoped that future installments of the PPP Godwinson crossover streams would in fact be more IBS lolcow orientated, because I thought that was where our conversation should have gone, but it didn't quite go there because obviously PPP is such a character of many colours himself. So like I said, we had a great stream. I emailed him shortly after saying, I had a really great time. Thank you very much. And then something peculiar happened. And I say peculiar because it happened before, but with someone entirely different to PPP. We had, myself and Coach Red Pill had a stream under very similar circumstances. We had a back and forth. We swapped hot takes. Again, I came away from that stream thinking it was very good. Our mutual sort of fan bases thought this was where a lot of kino could be made, a lot of nectar could be produced. And then what happened was Coach Rebel decided to slag me off in a video that massively backfired on him. It sort of painted him. Well, he painted himself as a snake. He painted himself as a sort of two-faced, uh, well, Chilean boomer. Uh, It's almost shocking to think that one could be surprised by Coach's behavior, as that's how he's been throughout his entire presence online. But I don't know. Maybe it shocked a few people. It certainly shocked a few people enough to go, "Whoa, what are you doing? This isn't right." You could have at least said it to me during the stream, Coach. Um, Whatever. But I certainly didn't expect the same thing to happen with PPP, because PPP did the exact same thing. After the stream, he started making videos, um, talking smack, disrespecting the soy father, making it seem as though there was some sort of gayopsery involved in the stream I had with PPP. I came entirely in good faith, um, uh, but I think what happens with people like PPP, what happens with people like Coach, is they've seen a few of my videos, they've seen that I try and make content on people that sort of exist on the fringes of society, and they think that they are the next target. They don't necessarily think they're the next target while they're having a conversation with me, but once I sit in their head for a bit, the sort of wheels go around, and they think, "Shit, okay, um, maybe that conversation I had with Goblinson is going to be picked apart and transmitted into a massive magnum opus, which is going to weave into some sort of completely autistic documentary." Well, no, no, it's not going to happen. Sorry, but it's made me reflect on how I come across to these people, because obviously, I mean, Coach and PPP weren't the first to do this. It happened with Jahans. I had a perfectly nice conversation with Jahans, and then I was written into the fan fiction, and that's where the whole name Godwinson comes from. Because originally I'd had that information exchange with Jahans, that interview with Jahans, 12 hours, 20 hours, something similar to that number, um, and he went away, and the wheels turned in his mind, and he wrote me into his fiction as Black Adam of the multiverse. And then, as he wrote more fictions, he wrote me as a sort of prime minister of sylphs and Great Britain and whatever baffling shit you can imagine. And then he decided to give me a last name. So hence, it evolved from Black Adam of the multiverse to Black Adam Godwinson of the multiverse. So I took Godwinson as a name. Um, and it's happened all over again. It's happened all over again with PPP and Coach. And I'm not going to lie, these past couple of weeks, with this back and forth between PPP, it's been quite nostalgic for me. It's reminded me of the old days with, well, going back and forth with Jihad's. But the thing is with PPP, he's a lot more self-aware. Even though this is a fellow that, you know, spread his cheeks on live stream, he's a lot more self-aware than Jahan's ever was. Certainly back then. And now it's interesting because maybe PPP is the new. People are telling me, right? People are telling me that PPP isn't ironic. It's all sort of post irony. He's the exact same as Jahan's used to be, except this is the new sort of breed of what a cow is. You know, this is the person that lives on 8chan and takes their cues from that. Yet is a cow still or something similar, and they're almost being self-deprecating to the mask their innate flaws. This is what people are telling me. People are telling me that PPP is the real lolcow, but he's not a lolcow. PPP's fine. PPP, well, PPP has a great eye for comedy, and anyone that's seen any clips that I've put on my channel, anyone that's seen any of even his videos can see that he's got a great eye for comedy, and he's very self-aware. Um, I think that PPP is a new breed of sort of, when you've got so many people caring about where the optics are, caring about what's happening, um, and how their actions are going to contribute to a wider sphere of public political life. You know, your Sargons, your Nick Fuentes, who we're going to talk about later on. It's refreshing to have someone like PPP who's going to spread their owners on camera and jiggle their tits and review Crash Bandicoot and say that he is running ops on Kraut and he was laughing at Sargon losing his Patreon, you know, without any sort of caveats, without any sort of, oh, I respect him as a person, all of that sort of thing. No, PPP is gonna shit on someone and he doesn't care because the optics don't matter, and that's really refreshing. That's what I really like about PPP. But yeah, if you haven't seen any of his recent content, he's made some fantastic videos where he's been watching my old content from years ago, and he's like reviewing it as though it's just been released, which is quite interesting just as a person watching them, because you know when I was making the goblins and stuff, it was coming out on a daily basis. People forget when they've been re-uploaded by lots and lots of people many times over the past few years, over the past few months. People forget that a lot of this stuff was made sort of day to day. And so a lot of the stuff I don't really have a memory of. So it's really interesting seeing PPP go back over that and give sort of thoughts on it. Yeah, I'd like to do a podcast with him. It's always been a dream of mine to sort of go have a podcast with someone who's not an e-celeb, someone who's just kind of an anti-celeb. You know, the dream would have always been to have the podcast with Jahans, but I think the podcast with PPP would be great. I think it would be great, but he'd have to step up his game, of course. He'd have to, you know, ditch the sort of boomer tangents, ditch the wacko Christianity talk. Because if he doesn't, then I'll just go into Heaven's Gating and piss him off. But no, I'd like to do a podcast with PPP. I definitely think his stuff and my stuff is very similar, and we're almost two spirit animals running along the same field. It'll just be the two of us, you know, building castles in the sky, I hope. Anyway, let's move on to Guntgate, because I'd scripted a video for Guntgate. I'd called it. It was going to be called Gunt, a documentary, and it was essentially going to be a documentary about Knoxville and about the IBS meetup. I'd scripted about 5 or 6 pages of this, and I was reading over it as I was about to sit down and make the video, and I thought, I can't waste my precious life force making this. But I'll tell the story that was going to be in that documentary. So the Boomers, they had Woodstock. The alt-right, it had Charlottesville. The Albion Party, they had Manchester. The Liberalists, they had the Beer Hall Putsch. And, well, the IBS crowd, they had Knoxville. And now Knoxville, it was born out of this idea that Andy Warski was going to attack a crippled Tonka saw, and there'd been lots of back and forths between the two. Secret audio recordings leaked. Warski calling Tonka out for these secret audio recordings and saying, you know, fight me, bitch. And it had been quite an interesting build-up. They'd sold a few tickets, the sort of IBS lot, and they'd thought, well, maybe they thought they could translate internet blood sports into the real life. They could perhaps stop the demonetization of all of their revenue streams, and take it into real life and take it to real life events, and maybe build up a secure safety net monetarily for them all. That clearly hasn't happened, and what Knoxville turned out to be was a meetup between e-celebs who couldn't really pull in an audience, which I thought was quite revealing. You'd had, Coach Red Pill had flown out all the way from whatever sort of Eastern European country I think it's Ukraine, he's there somewhere hiding. But he'd flown down and decided to join Ethan Ralph Warski, and Dick Masterson, and they posed for photographs. They did like streams together, and all of this was fantastic. And it wouldn't have really registered Knoxville. It would have been a flash in the pan. We'd have all forgotten it after a day or so, because obviously the event didn't happen, the fight didn't happen, Tonka didn't show up, and essentially all it was just like it was a get together. It was a liberalist beer hall putsch light, if you know what I mean. Except no one was really there to promote a political platform. It was just essentially a Ralph Retort live. It was a Killstream live. But the most fascinating thing happened, and that was a photograph was taken. And at first glance, and I didn't notice until it was pointed out to me. At first glance, you just think that this is Dick Masterson, Ethan Ralph, and Kurt Redpill, a very dishevelled Kurt Redpill, just standing in a line, and posing for a photograph and smiling, and their arms are all around each other. It's a moment of joy. It's a moment of glee. But upon closer inspection, you notice that there's a glimpse of overhanging flesh, a gunt on Ethan Ralph's body, sort of poking out through his shirt. And I think the gunt has become a symbol, an icon, an emblem for what IBS is and was. Because the gunt is very the gunt could only have existed during this moment in time. It could only have been supreme during this moment in time, because to understand it, we have to go back. We have to go back to the year of relative victory that Ethan Ralph had. It was victory enough that he could gorge himself, that he could let the gunt reach optimum supremacy. Right, ready for that photograph at Knoxville. He'd gorged himself, and we have to understand why. He ate like a king. He feasted like a king as Sargon was brought down, as he grew and grew and grew. All of the shekels he was getting, from Stream Me, from YouTube before that, before he was taken off, and before he was sort of had that hit piece on him in the Wall Street Journal. He was the gunt itself grew and grew and grew exponentially as Ethan Ralph won and won and won. And we can't deny that in the light of the shit show that was 2018 and all of the IBS antics, it was Ralph's show that won out. It was the Ralph Retort kill stream that actually won out amongst all of them. It outlived the Baked Alaska experience. I don't know if anyone can remember that. It outlasted the Kumite. It outlasted Warski Live. And in the end, we were left with Ralph's show. And as Ralph grew more and more, quote unquote, successful, so did his waistline. And that's why the gunt is symbolic of what IBS was, right? But I think that the way it's going, the space year 2019 and into 2020, it's all going to come crashing down. And I think the gunt now is only going to go smaller and smaller and smaller until Ralph's, a waif, a skin and bone skeleton, wasting away on the street, almost homeless, scavenging for food as he reaches a point where he can't sustain himself. Because I don't think that 2019 is going to yield the lulls that 2018 did. I don't think it's going to yield enough drama to sustain the gunt, to keep the gunt growing. I don't think Ralph's going to be around. I don't think they're going to let him be around, because I think the way the internet's going, they're going to be censoring people more and more and more. And I don't think Ralph's gunt is going to grow more than it possibly. I don't think Ralph can be the king of the mountain anymore, because all of these platforms that have already censored him are going to start censoring people even more. I don't think Stream Me can really hold Ralph for a long, long time. And I don't want that not to I quite like Ralph. I like the content. I've enjoyed. Well, I think we can all say pretty much that the golden age of the Ralph retort was when he was outing Matt as a flagger, when he was giving us all vindication that Matt was a piece of shit. But I don't think the Gunt can grow, and I think Knoxville was the apex of what IBS was. And unless things change, it's the Gunt's not going to grow. It's certainly not going to be a Gunt that's going to thrive off Sargon's ineptitude anymore. Because what's going to happen is Sargon's going to be deplatformed. He's going to lose his YouTube channel, and he'll just be. Will he be? There won't be any drama really. There won't be any lulls to be had. Once that final deplatforming happens, we're all going to laugh. We're all going to have a great time, and then that'll be it. It'll be the great finish. It'll be the great climax, and then we all starve. I think we all starve. We all look for new avenues. We all look for new scraps of food. We all look for new food sources. And I think the person who's going to starve the most is going to be Ralph, sadly. And who knows? Maybe the desperation to feed the Gunt, to keep the Gunt going, to maintain the Gunt, maybe it's going to cause him to do some desperate things in life. Maybe he's going to commit more crimes. Maybe he's going to go back to prison. And we're all going to end up back at the square one scenario where he was, during Gamergate. It's a tragic, tragic end. But this ties into my sort of thoughts on Fuentes and where Fuentes is going to end up. Because I don't see what we all do on this platform, on YouTube, or just sort of on the internet in general. I don't see what we all do as a sustainable model, and it's certainly not a career. It's certainly not something that's going to keep you going financially. You've got to get the money now and run. But I see people like Nick Fuentes, who's 19 or 20. I see someone like him, and I see a lot of disappointment. I don't feel disappointed in him, but I think he's going to be very disappointed, because when you kill everything in your life, you literally kill any chance of a career, any chance of an education, any chance of just a social life beyond the internet, which Fuentes has done, then you end up in this situation where you've got to put all your cards, all your chips on one thing, and he's obviously trying to put all of his chips on and being this internet host, being an Alex Jones type figure, America First, this whole stream, daily, nightly politics exchange thing that he's been working on. It's not sustainable. It's certainly not something that is a valid career. I think a lot of people, maybe a year ago, thought that Nick had a long-term future as maybe transitioning into the mainstream, maybe getting a job as some sort of low-level conservative politician, researcher, in America. People maybe would have thought that. Instead, what's happened is he's ingratiated himself more with people who are never going to be that, who never are going to be, who flip from one thing to another, and you can see the desperation in their eyes as they try out this new thing. The person that epitomizes that is Nick's new best friend, and that's Baked Alaska. If Baked Alaska ever came around me or anyone I knew with a business proposition, I tell my friends, I tell myself to run, to get as far away from this man as possible, because what he is a pretender. What he is they want to be influencers. They want to have a career in this, but what's going to happen is someone like Baked Alaska he's going to kill himself, because they don't see themselves as having real life jobs. They don't see themselves operating in the real world, and they don't have a skill set where they can move into a real life. They don't have anything that's going to make them money. They don't have any. they don't have any wherewithal. They just think that they can all exist at their computers their entire life and not really live. It's almost hard. It's very hard to articulate. It's very hard to articulate. But honestly, in even the biggest Nick fan, as I used to be, do you honestly have all your cards on Nick Fuentes anymore? Do you honestly not just want him to rise up and do something that's just gonna secure his financial future? Because the longer he talks about, you know, killing thoughts, the longer he allies himself with Baked Alaska, of all people, these irony bros, who all they do is punch right and all they do is just kill any chance of them being able to make a financial uh, living, right? And that's fine if they don't care, if they absolutely don't care about moving out of their mother's house and doing something worthwhile and having this family they keep preaching about. But it's kind of not fine, really. What's the best thing that Nick Fuentes could do? Well, maybe if he maybe apply for some jobs in the real world, right? Maybe go back to college and finish his education. Maybe do something that's gonna not have him waking up in the middle of the night going, God, I'm making a terrible mistake. God, there is no career in this because I'm looking at all of these people around me who do the exact same thing being deplatformed. And I'm banking on myself not being deplatformed. And even when I try and change up a few things and I try and back away from things, ironically, then people around me and the mainstream media are writing articles about me, calling me this loser incel 19-year-old who's never going to move out of his mother's house. I just look at that situation and I go, God, rise up now or end up what? Homeless? Suicidal? It's a Jahanic scenario these people are in. And if what's going to happen in 2019 is we're going to see a load of deplatformings, lots of things are going to happen to these people and their way of life, and it's going to shake up a few things. And if these people don't wake up now and realize that they need to change a few things, transition away from the internet as a lifestyle and treat it more as a hobby as it should be, I don't think it's right for any person to grow up and think that I can shun all of society. I can shun my education. I can shun my work. I can shun any chance of me operating socially because I don't need all that because I'm going to be a big tiny celeb on the internet. I think that's a very cruel thing to tell a child, and I think it's a very warped way of thinking as they move up into into quote unquote success on the internet. And I think Fuentes would be lying if he didn't have these thoughts, if he wasn't waking up in cold flushes in the night and going, "What am I doing?" Um, and if he hasn't had this conversation with Baked Alaska, who's a sort of warped mirror into the future, into Fuentes' future, then he needs to. I think he definitely needs to pick Baked Alaska's brains because Baked Alaska is the inevitable endpoint of what of what happens when you do this irony broing, when you flip from thing to thing, trying to build a career, trying to build an e-career, I should say. It, even Twitter, even Twitter won't host Baked Alaska shenanigans. And what's he doing? What's Baked Alaska doing? The last thing I saw him on, he was doing a stream with Paul Joseph Watson's ex-girlfriend, and she was talking about shaving his ass. This is the inevitable endpoint of these people, just living online in a desperate attempt to claw in money, which is constantly disappearing every time they speak. They're being deplatformed from one platform or another. So yeah, I just worry for the state of Nick Fuentes. Um, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe people tell me that he's punched right so much now that people shouldn't care. He's an alt-light civnat. He's punched far too much to the right now that he's beyond redemption. But I don't see that. He's far too young to be beyond redemption. Um, and what I find interesting is clearly he's looked at what's happened to Richard Spencer, Mike Enoch, and that whole Daily Shower crowd. And he must have thought, I must do things differently. Do you know, if I want to get these ideas out there and make money on the internet, I've got to try and do things differently. But he's kind of done things the same way. It's a shame. It's a shame. I don't think Fuentes is going to grow a gunt. I don't think he's going to have enough victories or e-drama lulls or shekel success to be able to gorge himself and have a gunt like Ralph did. I don't think his gunt is going to be an emblem of a new age like Ralph's is. I think it's quite depressing, really. Anyway, those were my thoughts on those three topics: PPP, the Gunt, and Nick Fuentes. I'm going to throw this open to sort of questions because I'll take a few questions. So whatever you want to ask me, I will, I will, I will answer. Someone said if Fuentes wasn't a Christian, he would be suicidal by now. Um, I think you misunderstand. These people aren't. These people aren't. People like Bait Delasco and Fuentes. They're not really. They don't really hold the opinions they have because they change them so often, and they'll back away from them and ironically distance themselves from them in order to try and make money on the internet. Primarily, they just want to make money on the internet. They don't necessarily want to be speakers of dearly held beliefs. Fuentes wouldn't have anything to stand on if he wasn't such a hardcore Christ cut. Um, Fuentes' whole thing was being a reaction to the. I think he went to Charlottesville and I think he saw what happened there, and I think he thought, this is a bit too autistic. Maybe we can take a lot of these ideas mainstream by being a bit more presentable, by like wearing a suit and I used to believe that idea was fantastic. That idea of trying to transition things into the mainstream by looking a bit more like the mainstream and behaving a bit more like the mainstream kind of optically was great. But the more I see it, the more I see that these people are just are charlatans and liars, um, and are they'll drop their politics at the giving of a hat. They don't really care about, like I say, they don't really care about the beliefs as long as they can continue making money on what they're saying. What are your thoughts on the recent developments with Chris Chan and the downward spiral? I really don't know. I don't know. Has Barbara died? I don't know. Has she died? Has his mother died? Um, Last big things I heard, Chris Chan wise. Obviously, he'd carved that hole into his taint and was listening to whale sounds and told everyone that that was what caused that hole in his taint, and he was growing a vagina. Um, and then obviously he went to that event and broke and did like a transgender "We Have Rights" protest where he sat down. Aside from that, I don't really know. I just know that his mother's very close to death, and when she dies, obviously he's going to be either committed, he's going to either enter an asylum or something, or uh, he's going to be on a downward spiral to suicide. Do you have a plan for escaping the UK, or are you going to go down with the ship? No, I'm going to transcend to the level above human, and I'm going to join my elders on the comet Hale-Bopp. Goblinson, what was with the Heaven's Gate reading? I missed the first part. Was it a palate cleanser after PPP? Um, a lot of people ask me what my politics are. I think my politics can be found in Heaven's Gate. And another thing why I did the reading was I wanted to thin out a few of the people that were kind of what I'd call like hangers on. I don't know. I had a load of new people join the sort of Gulpinson audience when I made a certain video, and I don't know. I just wanted to thin those people out. Those people that are subscribed to me, Dankula, Jim in Sargon, that crowd that was just because I'm in their subscription field, they'll watch. I don't want that. I don't want to be an e-celeb like that. I'd rather just thin out the crowd, piss a few people off, and start again. It's either that, it's either Heaven's Gating or delete the channel. Godwinson, what will people laugh at on the internet in 10 years? And how do I keep my D from dipping into the toilet while I do a poo? Um, I don't think people are going to laugh. I don't think we're going to be able to laugh the way we do now at the internet in 10 years. I think it's going to be completely sanitized. I think we're all going to have to use our names, our actual full names. We're going to have our IDs out on show. It's going to be a very sanitized place. We're all going to have a license wherever you are. We're all going to have a license, mate. And it's going to be terrible. Goblinson, what do you think of Fuentes' sister being a degenerate? So obviously I know that she she had an interracial relationship or something like that. I've seen like photographs with that sort of thing, and I saw a weird photograph where she's in like a bikini thing, um, and her stink hole is very very clearly visible, and I think a lot of people have picked up on that. If I was Fuentes, I'd feel great shame in if my whole thing as Fuentes' whole thing is you know, preaching about these high ethics, these high family ethics, and keeping uh, those that are female in order, as Fuentes preaches, I'd feel almost embarrassed that my own sister, my own flesh and blood, was going around behaving like that. But I don't know. I don't know. Um, like I say, you look at a lot of these people and the way that their families are structured and the way their lives are lived, and you can see that a lot of their beliefs they hold or pretend to hold are exactly that. They're just doing this stuff for money in a vain attempt that they can carve a niche out for themselves and they can outlive the 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 YouTube career. Godwinson, you missed the AIDS question. I haven't seen the AIDS question. You'll have to post that again. Godwinson, I have a theory. The gun is a dimensional iceberg. Only 0.000% is in this dimension, and the remaining is dormant in the pocket dimension, and now it's awakening. What do you think? Yeah, I think that happened. I think it awoke during Knoxville. It was ready to push itself out beneath Ralph's ill-fitting shirt, precisely for that photograph, precisely because it wanted to emerge, it wanted to reveal itself to the world, and it wanted to be included as many memes as possible. Someone's writing, Moon Mutation's writing, that picture is not Fuentes' sister. So I've also, because I spoke about this on a stream the other day, on someone else's stream. Someone got very angry when I was talking about this. I'd assumed this was Nick. I assumed Nick was just running defense on this. I don't know. People have told me two things. I'm about 90% convinced that this is Nick's sister. And certainly the reason why it's not surprising people is because this is exactly the behavior she's kind of engaged in prior. Someone's written, sorry, the chat's faded, but I saw briefly, Godwinson, my sister has turned into a slut. Is it moral for me to abandon her? So that's kind of like the Molyneux, let's all defoo, let's all ruin our own family lives because we can all join this universally preferred behavior cult. Um, no, you've got to stick by your family. You've got to try and do your best to kind of reform their behavior. And look, if your views are that strong and you really you really care about wider world and changing the minds of the wider world, if you can't really affect your own family, the people closest to you, the people you see every day, then that says more about your own abilities and your own hypocrisy if you're telling other people to do the same thing. Um, no. So yeah, no, don't abandon your family, even if they are degenerates. You've obviously got to try and work some of that magic. Robinson, how long after the removal of anonymity will people be able to speak real opinions online, if ever, do you reckon? Um, I don't know. I think obviously everyone's going to be allowed to have like opinions, and people are going to speak them. But I don't think we're all going to be able to. It's just going to be a very sanitized place. I think if you put up, your fresh Gunt meme, don't be surprised if you have like actual law enforcement around your house because someone isn't pleased with you, because obviously now you've got to provide your address and your license to post on the internet, and now suddenly, the creativity and the kind of memes don't have that kind of creative further if you're watching over your shoulder every time, worrying about offending people. So I think trolling is going to be a thing of the past. Certainly, proper trolling, real trolling. Um, all right. Uh, Godwinson, what's a better cure for the thought disease? I don't really care about thoughts. Um, these irony bros and your fantasies make far too much of this, and you just think you'd have a far better time just um, not coming across as incels, not not deluding the minds of your followers, and kind of making them see that, because a lot of these Fuentes types and the people that follow them, they think that MGTOW is a great way to go, and they think that like being an incel is fantastic. Um, except they don't call themselves incels; they call themselves well, they are voluntary celibate because they think they're going to get married and then have all the nuptials in the world. But it won't work like that, because they'll just isolate themselves to the point where they are these basement dwelling neat incels, and it's gonna ruin any chance of game that they'll have. Godwinson, Trout is taking the heat by posting gunt edits from that board, so no worries. Is Trout posting gunts now? Jesus. Well, it was always going to happen that the Sargon crowd were going to pick up on any sort of anti-Ralph stuff and run with it. But you've got to realize that there's a hardcore base of kind of anti-Ralph, uh, anti-Ralphing that isn't aligned to the skeptics, that isn't aligned to the Krauts of the world. It's there purely because they don't. Well, it's the people that uncovered J. Caesar, and it's the people that want to expose that and just have a laugh. They don't really attack Ralph because he's offended their soy father king. Godwinson, have you ever read a guide on pimping? I unironically found some good advice there on how to keep women in check. No, I haven't. Um, yeah. Well, look, if Sargon picks up the Gunt memes, it's gonna die. Your best hope, if ever you want anything to die on the internet or just die in general, is get it picked up by Sargon, because he killed the golden rule on the internet now is that anything he touches, he kills. Anything he touches dies. Every fantastic meme, every fantastic show, everything that's been great dies with Sargon. Godwinson, Plato or Aristotle? Plato. Godwinson, what is the etymology of the Farshnook? Ah, okay. This is going to be a long question to answer. Um, all right, okay. Let's talk about this. So Jahans, when he was growing up, he had this burning desire to write cannibalistic fan fiction um, about Doctor Who, and he needed a Doctor Who. He couldn't call this person eating sylph women. He couldn't call it the Doctor because first of all it would be sort of copyright infringement, I assume, and secondly he considered himself more of a writer than just a fan fiction Tumblrite. He considered himself an artist in the classical sense, so he decided to personalize it. And this is where it gets even weirder. He he decided to call his character, his self-insert, his main character Farshnook, because he couldn't say, well, he had a speech impediment at the time, and he couldn't say what he wanted to say, which was farcical nuke. He'd read this thing in a comic where uh, this nuclear weapon uh, had this personality, this kind of farcical personality, and it was dropping on things that it wasn't intended to drop on. Um, and so originally it was supposed to be called the Farsh nuke was supposed to be called the farcical nuke. And bear with me, um, he wrote an assignment for his I don't know, year 7 English class, And he obviously wrote this degenerate piece of fan fiction and handed it in. And when the teacher asked him, "Oh, what's this character called?" Jahan's in a sort of a giddy spree of exultation. He couldn't quite get out the full phrase "farcical nuke," and because he was so hyped up, he said "farschnuke," and then it stuck, and that's how farschnuke happened. Um, Now you may ask, why did he stick with it? Why did all of this happen? Well, that's the great mystery of Johannism, isn't it? Goblinson, Only Fools and Horses or Red Dwarf? Which is the more upper class show? Well, personally, I like Only Fools and Horses, and I can't really stand Red Dwarf. I just think it's unfunny. But no, I like Only Fools and Horses. My favorite Only Fools and Horses is To Hull and Back. I like it when they go to Amsterdam to get the diamonds, and they're on the boat with Uncle Albert, um, and they get lost, uh, and then they come back, and the the police officer, I think it's Bill Slater, he comes in and he takes the diamonds in a sombrero, and then he gets arrested because it's all a sting by the Metropolitan Police. um, so what's your beef with Coach Red Pill? I remember him crying about you in a stream. I did a stream with Coach. I thought what he was doing on the shit stream. He had a channel called the Shit Stream where he was giving like hot takes on people uh, in like the IBS community, and I thought what he was doing was quite interesting. Certainly, no one was doing it at the time, where they were just giving this unfiltered, who gives a fuck take on things, and I thought that was great. So I did a stream with him, and during that stream, we gave hot takes and stuff like that, and he was trying to give these like, because obviously he makes these videos on, you know, incels, clean your room, that kind of tier commentary, and he was trying to do that. He was trying to give his like boomer takes on things, and but people were there just to hear IBS. People were there to just hear hot takes on autistic people on the internet. Um, and it came apparent sort of towards the end of that stream as we were wrapping it up that, I mean, Coach was talking about how he was posting on 8chan and how he was shilling his videos and stuff there. And I said to him, like, this is a road to nowhere. This is a real silly thing because all you're doing is just sort of you're part of the problem if you do that. You're a classic e-celeb who's trying to run damage control on a board that nobody cares about. Um, and it came apparent to me that essentially that whole shit stream channel he had where he was giving hot takes, they weren't his opinions. This wasn't maybe naively I thought that this was a 60-year-old Chilean's takes on on the internet, but it wasn't. It was he was reading 8chan posts essentially, and he was sort of exposed as this fraud. And I think that's why he got salty, maybe because um, maybe he didn't like that. But anyway, he made a video shortly after that, and I went into this at the top of this stream. He made a video saying that I was I don't know. I think he called me boring, which I thought was interesting. Goldberson just come back to making political videos into these instead of semi-esoteric, incomprehensible things. Um, well, what political videos do you actually want me to? I don't know. Do you want me to be like a Sargon? Oh my God, Brexit is awful. Oh my God, look at what Diane Abbott said. Oh my God, politics is boring for the most part. And I'm not going to be spending my days um, reading MSN articles aloud like mundane Matt's clone. Just to try and give this vague impression of staying relevant. If you want actual politics and actual political commentary, maybe you should go and you know look at someone far more interesting than I am. Godwinson, why is Master Bruce such a movement divider? Also, why would he authorize the killing of 9,000 Dresden citizens? Fills me with tears every time I think about it. Um, I think I spoke to a lot of people about Master Brew, because whenever I engage with kind of like my English audience, the English side of the audience, they always ask me about Master Brew. And what always comes up is I always say, well, personally, he was always fine. I haven't really spoken to him in a long time, but he's always been we've been fine. And when we spoke, we kind of had the same ideas about where we wanted to go in terms of where we wanted our country to be and where we wanted to try and take things. And then I always get this thing, well, oh, well, he's doing this. Oh, well, he's done this and he's done that and he's done this, and I just go, okay, all right. And I look at what he's doing, and it's the same stuff we were doing, well over a year ago. It's do it again, Bomber Harris. Originally, this was a thing just to piss off a few arch alt writers who didn't have a sense of humor. Um, and I don't know. I don't know. Do I think he divides the movement? Well, I think what happened was uh, Master Brew kind of realized, maybe towards the end of the Albion Radio stuff, that he'd picked up kind of this group of of lunatics. I think after Manchester, he realized that he kind of a lot of his audience that he dog whistled to, that had or that had maybe grown around him, was you know what weren't his kind of people. They weren't going to have any kind of effect. They were certainly weren't going to change the status quo in the sense that he wanted them to. Um, and I think he realized that he needed to distance himself from that, and I think that's what he's done. Uh, Now people tell me that, oh, he wasn't really one of them. He was just an alt light, Civnat, you know, blue pilled degenerate. Well, maybe I don't know. I don't know. Uh, but I don't know. Those days are long, long gone, and I think a lot of those people who used to be in that circle, I think that they've all grown up. They've all gone on to different things. And I don't think many people care about what Master Brew's doing. Not many people care about what anyone else is doing because they're all focused on their own little communities that they've built up and don't want to see disappearing because they're going to be deplatformed from any platform of worth of wide reach. um, right, Goblinson, do you believe that everything that was told in World War II is true? Uh, no. Well, obviously, I think Churchill said this. It's the victor who writes history, and he will be the one that intends to write it. Um, so I think that says a lot. If you look at a lot of Churchill's conduct during the war, and realize, I think you will realize that his status as a hero on both sides of the Atlantic is very unfounded. Um, and you may actually come to the conclusion that he's perhaps one of the worst people to hold the office of prime minister in history. I don't know. There was a recent Scottish MP that was taken to task by Piers Morgan on This Morning or Good Morning Britain. I saw it briefly before I was heading into work, and I just thought, is this where we are now, where we can't even accept well-established Churchillian revisionism now? Because it's well established that he's not necessarily the man he was in history. Um, but there are still people out there, your Daily Mail, um, that kind of milieu, who think that Churchill is Churchill is God, and anyone questioning it, even if you are on the far left, is kind of a non-person. Man, you've had an intro. You've had videos that would have made people flock to your channel, but instead you've deleted it all and slipped into irrelevancy. Yeah, I don't want people to flock to my channel. This is this has always been an esoteric outlet. I've never wanted to make money on the internet. I never have. I've been around enough trends and enough things that I could have jumped on and grown like that. But what I've realized is the more you make yourself known like that, and the more you pander to these large crowds and stuff you're just going to get yourself deplatformed anyway, and you won't be able to have a platform where you can just talk anything, because what's going to happen is they'll blacklist you like they've blacklisted Tommy Robinson, like they'll blacklist Alex Jones and Infowars and that sort of thing. Why I don't want a massive audience, you know. It doesn't appeal to me. If you don't realize that you're just listening to um, an esoteric Johannes, I don't know. I don't know. Godwinson, do you like David Irving? I've read a lot of his stuff actually. There was a film called Denial that was released a few months ago, maybe last year. I'm not sure, but I watched it a few months ago, and it had Timothy Spall playing. He was playing David Irving, and they played out the trial uh, where David Irving had to prove that, or had to lay out his claim that they weren't necessarily specifically designed like death camps in Auschwitz, something similar to that. That was the premise, but I thought that was very fascinating. Obviously, he's responsible for a lot of Churchillian revisionism, you know, that's actually entered mainstream academia. Um, and it's only because he started challenging stuff like the Holocaust that he's now, you know, seen as this pariah. Had he have done this, I don't know. People tell me if he'd done it more sensitively, it could have entered a bit of a mainstream. It could have entered a bit more of the canon, the literary canon. But I don't know. I don't know. There's obviously that school of thought that says that any sort of questioning of, you know, the Holocaust and any sort of genocide really leaves you open to uh, the treatment that David Irving's had over the years. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. I think a lot of, if you read into his own personal history, you see that he's faced a lot of financial hardship just holding these views. You can watch a very interesting interview on YouTube. It's like a hard talk interview he had, um, where he's talking. It's like the aftermath of the trial. It's the interviewer reading out the trial transcript, and you can almost it's almost a great testament, right, of David Irving's patience and his character to just face this relentless onslaught from a BBC propagandist just constantly attacking him, and he's still standing firm with his views and stuff like that. If you want to talk about, you know, real figures and stuff like that, people who aren't going to change their views at the drop of a hat, people who aren't going to hop from one thing to another, people who aren't like a baked Alaska, flitting from one lily pad to the other just to try and make a career out on the internet. You look at David Irving and you see a lot of integrity there, and I think David Irving is the antithesis to your Fuentes. Um, Sorry, your things are disappearing. Just a second. Your chats are disappearing. Um, Godwinson, should London be removed from the face of the planet? No. Certain parts of London are very nice, and they should be reclaimed, of course. Didn't Irving eventually cave to pressure later on, though? I don't know. I don't think he did. I think the man's led enough of a well, he's got enough of a legacy to leave behind for people, right-thinking people, to think and come to their own conclusions. Um, I do want to ask a question though, because it was a question I was having earlier today, a conversation I was having earlier today about this question. What do we all think of PPP? Do we actually think he's a real lolcow, or an esoteric individual like myself? I think he's very closely aligned to kind of where I'm coming from the internet. Um, and maybe when I was talking to Master Brew, that was the sort of similar vein we were trying to plunder, where, you know, we were people are saying who PPP is the sentient cow, performs for his own pleasure most of the time. Yeah, I think he's both. I think he's both self-aware, but I don't know. I don't think he's a cow. No, he's not Jahanic. You know, there's a different they're coming from a different furrow. They're coming from a different plane altogether, I think. Um, Goldmanson, what do you think of Varg? uh, I it weirded me out the other week. It came to my attention that Varg was a fan of mine. That he'd been watching some of my videos and like writing comments. Um, and I just thought this was baffling. You know, just crazy. I mean, this man. Well, we all know like the background of Varg. We all know that he's like a convict, a murderer, an ex-murderer, and he lives on this like commune in the woods in France, I think. Um, I don't understand if you're trying to affect things IRL and you've got these very strong opinions on society and how it should be ordered, and you've read all of this stuff, and you hand out these red pills on the internet for your followers to digest. I don't understand why you'd isolate yourself from society and not go out into the real world and practice what you preach. I don't see why you'd fence yourself off in the woods somewhere and do that. Um, Someone's written, Varg has 12 half autistic children and living off French dole, living the neat dream. Yeah, yeah, all right. That's pretty much it, isn't it? That pretty much sums up Varg. PPP would need at least one more pint of liquid autism injected into his brain to be at Jehanic level. Yeah. Now the accountants too. I think everyone would accept that he was that PPP was like a proper that he was a functioning human being, that he wasn't a complete lolcow. Had he not have spread his anus on camera, I still don't. I've still never seen this clip. I've still never seen the image either. But it happened, and people tell me that this is a worse extreme that even Jahans would go to, and in many ways they're right. So I don't know. I don't know. It's a difficult one to think of. Maybe we'll be pondering this question forever. Maybe we'll be pondering the CQ forever. The cow question, whether PPP or is a cow or not. You know, maybe we'll be pondering this perpetually, but I'm not sure. Personally, I err on the side of him being self-aware, and the anus doing just being a slip of his. Fam, why stray away from your older style of videos? Um, I haven't strayed away from them. I've always made content like this. I don't understand. Um, Gobinson, can you give me one good reason why I shouldn't? Sorry, your thing's faded. Why I shouldn't race mix? I'm not going to give you a reason. You know, uh, ultimately you're going to do what you want, um, and it's not my responsibility because I'm not going to hold myself as a leader of anything to try and change your minds. You can do what you want. I'm a Slav, so it's not like my genes would be going to waste. Um, like you can do what you want. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you'll do what you want anyway. If ever you're swayed by the words of an e-celeb, and not actual like pieces of literature or quotations from great men in history, if there's an e-celeb, you know, in your head at the moment of great moments of decision in your life, then I think that says more about where you shouldn't be than where you are. Um, so I wouldn't expect I wouldn't expect any great nuggets of advice to come from an e-celeb or even someone like Goldmanson. Um, Thoughts on CRP? I've done it. Coach is the eternal Chilean, and he'll carry on being so. Um, Goldmanson is a secret abo. That's right. Yeah. PPP is self-aware, but not enough to recognize the things that make him a cow. That's a very interesting comment. Because PPP thinks he's what sending up the Donald subreddit in that kind of culture, and is not really noticing that he's like overweight and morbidly obese, and is spreading his anus on cam. Is that where you're coming from? Um, Meh, I think Murdoch give me good advice. I hate this stuff. You should be taking advice not from your coach boomers or your your alt-right e-celebs, you should be taking it from the sources that they should be reading and telling you to go and read, right? You should be taking your advice from proper men, great men in history, actual, moments of literature, moments of greatness that have happened, in history's great tapestry. You shouldn't be taking it from e-celebs. Um, will you ever make another doc like you did with AGJ? Well, you can watch my best video ever. I still think this is it's my favorite video. Whenever I watch it, I think that this was my greatest piece of like art. It's called Journey of the 56%, and it's about these three Americans that live in this box, um, all on top of each other, and it's kind of a study of passive aggression, and it's kind of a study of where, if you've got, I mean, you can see this in your own life. If you have friends who aren't really your friends, who are like putting you down all the time, who are giving you false praise just to keep you inside their bubble. Well, this is the documentary I made is a study of that, and you can see a lot of things there which are fantastic. And it ends on a shot which I hadn't quite noticed at the time, but it ends on a shot where these fat people's three dogs are like attacking each other. But essentially, the shot is two of these dogs are teaming up on one dog, and that's a great metaphor, a visual metaphor for what actually happens in that documentary. Um, where Mark and Jennifer team up on John, and I spent a lot of time compiling that, and I do think that's my greatest. That's probably my video closest to art. I'd happily show that in public to people in a cinema or something. Goblinson, I'm not very well read. Could you recommend me something? Yes, I can recommend you Where Sylph Dawning, followed by The Controvox I Survivor, written by Alexander Gordon Johans, Esquire. Um, sorry, the chat keeps disappearing. Oh, here we go. Imagine that you think people who make cartoons give you great life advice. So this is talking about Murdoch. Now we all laugh at Murdoch stuff, and it's all great. And I think obviously their best ever thing they ever did was the Sargon one, where he transforms into that tentacled creature at the end, and a lot of great memes came from that. Sargon's Mekon-like head, and him exploding into this downfall of shit. A lot of that stuck, and a lot of that pissed him off at the time, which was even more fantastic. Dipping out, thank you for your thoughts and not monetizing Pretty Comfy Goblinson. Yeah, okay. This is another thing though, but people shouldn't be thanking people for treating the internet as it should be used and not as like a career. Um, you shouldn't be monetized, I bang on about this a lot, but people shouldn't monetize on the internet really. Certainly not autistic videos about lol cars or just drama in general, because it just leads them for a massive fall. Prince Hubris is mentally ill. Is this one of the Irony Bros? Like, I'm not familiar with some of them. I know who Beardson is. Um, a lot of the ones that aren't Fuentes are clearly like hangers on of Fuentes. Uh, are kind of like they're all unified by this hatred of Richard Spencer, which I find odd. Um, because their whole thing is like being optics in preserving the optics, and Richard Spencer's he's the most successful out of all of them. They're never your Fuentes are never going to reach the mainstream media coverage that he's had, and that's their dream. So I don't understand. Um, I mean, sure, you can talk about how Spencer's being found out as this like wife beater. Um, that's kind of crap, and that's killed whatever chance he's going to have, appearing on mainstream media outlets where he can argue, where he can be confronted by people of color, telling him he's a racist. That's not going to happen anymore. Um, but I don't think you're ever going to see. I don't think you're ever going to see people like Fuentes and Beardson reach the levels that Spencer reached. Maybe no quote unquote alt right figure ever will in the mainstream eye, but I don't know. I still have a kind of hope. Um, but I don't think it's ever going to come from the irony bros, because they don't realize that when they say that thoughts must die, that they are equally being, your Wall Street journals of the world aren't going to be thinking, oh, this is ironic. They're just going to run with it. They're going to take it as and run with it. Sargon tried using the irony bro defense when he was out of this list, like when he said the white N words thing. One of his first statements in response to that was, "I was being ironic." Um, no, it's just going to get you deplatformed. Sorry, your things are fading away. My honest opinion is that you've tried making videos presenting your real views, then get scared of getting kangarooed and deleted it all. I just don't like a large audience. My videos get uploaded by everyone anyway. So and I'm happy to grow the subscriber bases of other channels. That's fine. That's great, and it actually makes me happy when I realize that a lot of this stuff doesn't get lost in the ether. That people are actually watching and people are actually keeping it and people are actually re-uploading it for a new generation of autists to behold. Um, do you have faith in the political solution? Yeah, but I don't think it's going to come from people on the internet. I don't think you're going to see great change from people who want to be. This is my big thing. Yeah. So here's the thing. I think you're going to have a lot of uh, incitement for change from people whose entire life is on the internet, whose entire like financial net is built around the idea of keeping you on the internet and keeping you donating to their Patreons, to their Streamlabs, to their PayPals. You're not going to have real proper words of like mobilization or just faith from people who want to keep you and them on the internet and in their life that they exist in the moment. So I think you should always be wary of people who tell you things on the internet. You should be wary of people who exist solely online and who are telling you that there's no real faith, that you shouldn't mobilize, that you shouldn't go out there because you're going to get shut down and stuff like that, because that's just going to kill any chance and hope you have. And I've seen a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people become blackpilled by this. Um, a classic example is Eggman. If you're not familiar with the story of Eggman, he he came from a place where, there was almost faith there, and now, there's just an nihilistic approach, and a lot of that is born by this idea of when you listen to these e-celebs talk too much, and you realize that you fail to realize that they're keeping you in this bubble because they want to keep themselves, fed. They want to keep the money rolling in. You fail to realize that, and you just think that the world is everything they're saying, and you think that we're all fucked, but we're not. There's going to be a chance for change. The current situation we're in now, in the grand scheme of time, the grand spectrums of time and the multiverse, it's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. It can be reversed, and the damage that's been done since what Frankfurt, the Frankfurt School, if you want to buy into that boomer take, it's a few generations at most. It can all be reversed. A lot of this stuff can be reversed, but like I say, be wary of people bearing like false witness and giving false advice. Um, do you think one day, 3 years from now, Sargon? Sorry, your question's faded away before I read it, but do you think he'll go full 1488? Um, I don't know. I think Sargon's an enigma in the sense that uh, I think look, I think the moment Sargon's YouTube dies, that's the end of Sargon. You're not going to see him around doing his political LARP. Um, Maybe he'll try for a few months, but when it becomes apparent that he can't do his like NP for Swindon shindig, when he gets like blacklisted from UKIP and all of that, um, you're not going to see, because the passion for like changing the world and changing the country isn't really in Sargon's mind. He just wants to continue making money and building his ego. Um, I think personally, right? If someone's tomorrow said, "Oh, Sargon, change all of your content up to streaming Fortnite," or streaming some random video game, and you're going to have more success, and you can be a king of this mountain. I think Slogan would jump on that, and I think he'd completely abandon all of this free speech politics that he's banging on about now, because he'd have enough ego boost boosting there on that side, to keep him going. I don't think he's motivated by a need, a will for change. I think he'll, like a lot of these celebs, they hop from lily pad to lily pad, trying to build a quote unquote career out of it. Um, and if you don't think that's going to happen, you've just got to look at his track record and track history. The only thing that keeps a lot of his stuff kind of unified, the one thorough line for a lot of the stuff, isn't even politics. It's just this idea of free speech and not being censored on the internet. Um, yeah, so I don't think I don't think Sargon's politically motivated. I just think he's motivated by the idea of wanting to continue as e-celebrity. Seems like a lot of black pillars have a misunderstanding of or ignorance of history. Yeah, and let's not pretend. It's very easy to say you're black pilled. It's very easy to give up. It's very easy to say you don't care about things. Um, but look, you don't care. You don't not care about what's happening. If something personally happens to you, unless you're a complete sociopath or psychopath, if something happens to you personally, and you have like no reaction to it and you have no feeling, you are okay. You've won your little nihilist black pill badge. Well done. But I believe very few people in life are like that, and those that are dangerous. And so yeah, there's a chance for change. I just disagree on lots of the ideas that are being put forth. Um, this is an idea on like Brexit. It's very relevant to like to Britain, and maybe it'll bore you. I don't know who's listening out there, but I hope that there are some sort of like uh, lads out there who know what I'm talking about when I say this. But I talk to a lot of people IRL. When we talk about Brexit, it always comes up. Whoever you talk to in this country, everyone's got an opinion on Brexit, and I'm always asked, do you regret voting for Brexit, Adam? Is it something you regret? And I say, well, no, because at the time I thought there was a real chance for change. But personally, I'd vote I'd vote to remain. If there was a people's vote tomorrow, I'd vote to remain. And then you see people sort of recoil in shock, and I go, why? What's that reaction for? And they say, well, people will riot on the streets. People won't accept that. And I say, good. This is what we want. If that's what's going to get people if that's what's going to mobilize people and get people to like really change the status quo, then sure, I'll be part of that catalyst. I don't care, you know. If 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 uh, if a second referendum is going to get people out on the streets, I'm happy with that. I'm happy for that. I'm happy for the will of the people, the will of the public to stamp itself. Um, I don't think the right wing has the balls to stand in the street. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, we've seen a lot of like the alt right stuff. We've seen that attracts fringe people, a lot of mentally ill people, people who are kind of like excluded from society. And so they go online and they read these ideas and they think, oh, I'm going to call myself alt right. I'm gonna post these alt right memes, and that's my will to change. And then we had those ones that actually took to the streets, uh, Charlottesville, and we kind of realized that they were just people who had a gun and wanted to like wave it around, wanted to like pretend to be this weird militia. There was a documentary out recently called Age of Rage. It was about Charlottesville, and you saw in that kind of like these like weird militias carrying like you know black sun flags, um, and you just think this is a great LARP. These people have clearly jumped on this. These NRA, militia types have jumped on this because they want to They just want to shoot people. They don't really care about they don't really care about the ideas. They just want to fight Antifa. Um, so no, I don't know. I just don't. I think we need to ditch this idea of left and right because obviously it's a completely outdated model and it sets up this conflict that doesn't really need to be there. Um, a lot of people say that if you look at what the far left says and you look at what the far right says in terms of their ideas, in terms of like abandoning this neoliberal agenda that we're all subjugated to, then you can you can unify that and really go for it and wipe out this capitalist. You can put three echoes around that if you want um, dogma and change things. I think that's what we need to do. Really, we need to like unify. Well, Striker says a lot about this, but yeah, I think you can. I think the horseshoe is real, um, and I think the far left and the far right, beyond like your fucking militias, beyond the antifaring and the militiaing of the alt right, um, the far left and the far right do have a lot of mutual ground. Um, your favorite Dark Souls? I like Demon Souls the best. Thoughts on generation identity? I I don't really. They've not really registered with me, and that probably says a lot about them. Really, I mean, I think a lot of these generation identity people they exist in that bubble and don't really they think that that bubble's penetrating other spheres. It's actually getting to the public a lot more, but it's not. Um, they're not really registering because they're kind of preaching to their own choir, um, and not really having an effect on anything else. Uh, Goldwynson is Nazbol. I don't know. But you can kind of see where the mutual far left and the far right uh, intersect. And I've said it for years. Goldmanson, what's a good manly sport? Cricket. The more I look back on recent history or the rampant degeneracy on clear display across all of the internet, things keep fading before I can read them. Um, the more I think the collapse of society will be a good thing in the long run. Well, obviously things aren't going to collapse overnight. That's a kind of myth that's perpetuated by people who want you to keep you in the status quo. Um, the vast majority of people are kind of self-sufficient anyway. Like if they switched off the news for the day and switched off the internet, they could operate quite well. I'm talking about normal people, people who kind of go out and work and have their own families and just live their own lives. Um, it wouldn't really matter if this neoliberal thing collapsed really. If it was phased out, which it would be, it'd be fine because obviously we were phased into this. We can reverse that. We can reverse all of that. Far right and far left see same problems but have a different solution. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah, but the way you create that new solution is by unifying the ground, right? By recognizing the common ground, by taking out the far left, far right divide, removing this like label of left and right, this dichotomy that they want you to have, and focus on a common ground. Thoughts on the irony bros? Well, I've been giving thoughts on them. I just think they're a road to nowhere, really. I think the idea of injecting humor into the alt right, it was kind of what it needed a few years ago. um, I think a lot of them are there purely because they want to create a platform where they can make money on the internet, but they don't realize that they're too late to the crowd. What happened to Master Brew? I don't know. Has he gone now? I don't know. I looked for Albion Radio the other day because I did a few episodes there. I wanted to listen to a few of the other ones, but it's gone. It's all been deleted, so I don't know what's happened. Uh, so Godwinson is sitting in a closet in pure darkness to talk to us. um, is Discord a neat paradise? I don't know. I don't know. Um, the boards are the neat paradise, and always have been. Monarchy or democracy, which do you prefer? I don't know. I prefer democracy. Would you consider a video on hiding in my room? I did. Hiding in my room is a lot like PPP, where he's kind of like a self-aware lolcow. Um, he has this very scattered life where he, he's like fucking his way around Japan, and he has like a new wife every week, and this new wife has no idea that she's married him. Um, and he had these issues with his parents, and a lot of his shtick was kind of saying this very shocking stuff, um, uh, and talking about it on camera. You can watch videos where he's talking about how he likes the smell of arse, um, how you know a lot of the sexual encounters he had with women in the past, and he kind of like degrades them by talking about these very explicit details, and you just think, okay, I mean, he's not unaware of what he's doing. He's actually quite self-aware. Um, his name's like Daniel Lord, isn't it? I don't know if he's still in Japan, but I kind of lost interest when he went to Japan and he was being just a degenerate in Japan. I just thought, obviously I think he's like half Malay or something, and he's done videos where he compares himself to Elliot Rodger and he ponders whether he's like Elliot Rodger because obviously he's mixed race and he comes from that stock, where they're kind of genetically lost and they don't they think they don't have a home. Um, I don't know. This Happer stuff is quite. It's unfortunate. It's just unfortunate, and I think Daniel Lord is symptomatic of it, really. Goblinson, what do you think of libertarians like Sticks? Uh, yeah. Well, like I say, Sticks is one of those people that will say things just to keep you donating to his Patreon and stop you from actually taking action and sitting on the streets. And don't forget that he lives in like one of the whitest states in America, and he believes in this whole idea of civic nationalism, right? Um, well, that's simply because that's informed entirely because of where he is geographically and where he is. Um, that's his whole situation in life. He hasn't had to consider that maybe civic nationalism isn't the solution, isn't the right idea. Certainly for more diverse areas, but I don't know. Someone's written here: Horatio Carey was doxxed by Master Brute and vice versa. No Albion Radio. Jesus. Um, I don't know what to say to that. I personally, I would say that Master Brute didn't strike me as that sort of person. But I don't know what bad blood happened in when I left and all of that. I don't know. I don't know. Uh, I will say that I met Horatio, um, and for the life of me, I can't even remember his name. I think he gave me like his first name, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember it. And Master Brew's name, I can't remember either. So, because the whole time I met them, I was just calling them by Horatio and Master Brew because why not? It didn't really strike me that I was meeting a person, that I was meeting an entity that exists on the internet and having a laugh with them. Um, I knew about Horatio's doxing, but I don't know. I don't know. It's a shame that this has happened, but I don't think everything should have been deleted because of that. Um, I like his occult videos. I like Styx's best videos, in my opinion, are the gardening ones, because they actually do impart actual skill and stuff like that. Uh, that feeling when I live in a city that's only 23% white. Where do you live? What do you think will happen to JF? I think he's going to be deplatformed. I think he's done his best to try and give an acceptable face to his politics, and that's great. And he's certainly produced a lot of good shows. When since his separation from Warski, this whole public space thing has been quite good. Um, it certainly gives an outlet for a lot of ideas to be had. But I think the moment it enters any sort of mainstream seminal uh, vernacular is the moment it's deplatformed, is the moment he's off the internet, and that's a shame. That's a real shame. Uh, but yeah, I mean, Jeff's fine. I think he's like a libertarian, isn't he? What's your biggest white pill? I don't know what a white pill is actually. I know what a blue pill is. I know what a red pill is. I know what a black pill is, but I don't know what a white pill is. Is it one that gives you sort of hope? Um, do you watch Porcelain? He has an upcoming documentary on Sargon. I watched his Joe Rogan one, um, and he did one on Opie and Anthony. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a lot more polished in like professional than any sort of stuff that I'd ever make. But I think it's far more sanitized than a lot of even like Jim's stuff. It's more sanitized. The Porcelain stuff is far more sanitized than just like a regular Alon making stuff on the internet. It's good stuff though. I mean, it's a good watch to have on in the background. Um, it'll be interesting to see what he does on Sargon. I don't know if he'll be sympathetic or what. Um, but the only way you could make a Sargon documentary is if you actually show his downfall into becoming a complete cow. But I don't know if they'll do that. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll paint him as like a martyr for free speech, because his Patreon's been deplatformed. That would be more profitable for Porcelain. He'd get more of these skeptics on side that'll donate to his Patreon if he has one. I do know something about Porcelain though. I remember if you watch a lot of like Opie and Anthony clips, he used to shill his stuff on there quite a bit. He used to like shill his documentary on there. It's kind of like back. Another one that used to do it a lot. There's a person called Hack Fraud Media that did like a red letter media, um, like alternative Force Awakens review, and it was actually quite good. But it had like a massive dislike rate because he was constantly posting it on the TV board on 4chan. Every thread you'd see it in, beneath like Sneeding, he'd be there shilling this documentary, shilling this like red letter media style review, and just put a lot of people off. Had he let it stand on his own and just let it be found naturally, he'd have had a lot more, I don't know, respect. I don't know. Goblinson, why are you not showing your wonderful face? Uh, I can show it now. I don't know. It's quite all right. Styx had a series of Fallout Let's Plays. It was quite comfy. Yeah, yeah. The one thing about Styx that I'm actually quite interested in, and I don't know if it ever got cleared up. I remember when he was being accused of being a paedophile. I don't know. Did that ever get cleared up or what? Have you ever been recognised in public? Yes, I have. It's happened 4 times now. Um, oh, okay. The first time it happened, I was just sort of walking down the street, and someone came up to me and said, I said, "Are you Godwinson?" And I was like, "Okay, hello." And we just had like a very odd conversation. But I thought, I didn't think it was a random encounter. I just thought this person had been following me or something. Um, but we had like a back and forth. We had photos. He took like a selfie, and I signed a thing of his. He wanted me to sign something. Uh, so I signed it, Alexander Gordon Jahan's All the Best. Um, and I just carried on. And I thought this was like very weird and baffling. Um, the next time I was kind of like recognized, I was in a pub, um, and I was with a few of my mates, and there was very clearly like a society from a university like on a table somewhere, nearer the bar. And they were very clearly like one of those like edgier societies at a university. This was kind of like a Make America Great Again, like a Donald Trump fan club society, whatever. Um, and I'm up at the bar and I'm getting a drink, and I thought at the time that I'm standing at the bar and I'm hearing my theme tune. I'm hearing the just hearing it. And I think, and I was just kind of like, I'd had a few, and I was kind of swaying back and forth slightly, and I was just waiting for my drink to come across. And I thought I've had enough to drink. I've had far too much to drink now. I need to stop. And obviously, I was walking back with the drinks, and I see that these people they're watching one of my videos. I'm seeing my title screen go by, and they've got my like tablet in the center of the. They've got a tablet in the center of the table with my face on it. It was the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen. There was an empty seat by one of them, and I decided, I'll just sit down. So I sat down and I'm watching them all. They haven't really registered me, and I'm watching them all like watch one of these videos that I'd made. I think it was Neat Hogged It. I think it was the Leah's Cool One study. Uh, and like one of them like double takes upon seeing me and goes, I don't think they actually quite realized that I was the person there. Um, and then it hit them, and then they realized that they just couldn't believe it either. And I just thought, this is baffling. I can't believe, yeah. And so yeah, we all took photos, and it was a great. It was just a really weird experience. I'm sure you've all seen these photos. I'm sure they've all leaked, but um, yeah, it kind of made me aware that obviously the stuff I was doing had kind of a reach. Um, and then the other time, well, there's been four times, but the other time I was in Waitrose doing some shopping, um, and I was going to like the checkout queue. Do you know what I mean? There's like an automated checkout queue, and I was like bagging up stuff. Um, and one of the people doing the so if like if one of these automation machines fucks up, you kind of you have to wait for assistance, right? And one of these people came to me, and they were like doing the stuff, and they looked at me and said, "Oh, do I know you?" And I was like, I'm not sure, I don't know. And they said, "Oh, um, did you make videos on Sargon?" And I was like, "Okay, all right, you've got me." uh, and we just had this conversation about what Sargon was doing. But they were like they seemed to be like a Dankula fan, and they wanted to talk about like my opinions on Dankula. It didn't really I don't really care about someone being arrested for breaking the law, but I'm just glad that the law was upheld. And then the other time, this was relatively recently actually. I was waiting for a train, um, and I, it was quite weird because again, you're never sure if these are like random encounters or if someone's been following you for a long time and I've now suddenly picked up the courage to go and speak to you. But I was waiting for this train, and someone came and sat by me in like the waiting room, uh, and they and they just wanted they just instantly started they started watching like videos on their phone, and then they were like being very loud with their phone, and I was just like minding my own business, and and they were like watching what were they watching now? They were watching a Boogie 2988 video, and they were being very loud with it, and I was, and then he like he turned the phone to me and said, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And I said, "Well, I mean, clearly he's doing his Francis character. It's quite it's the same old Boogie." And he said, "Oh, okay. Um, so you're familiar with Boogie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And then they put up like a mundane map video on their phone, and I thought, here we go, here we go, here. My whole thing was then I didn't want to be stuck on a train with this fellow talking about Goblinson videos for the next like 4 hours. Um, so I was kind of like doing my best to be kind of evasive. And he kept asking me my opinions on these things. And I said, well, eventually I just went, you you know that I'm this Goblinson guy on the internet, right? So you're asking me about these things. Is that what you're doing? Because I'm going somewhere. I don't want to be doing this for hours. If you want to just get cut to the point, we'll cut to the chase, and I don't know. I'll say some stuff. I'll say Nietzsche rise up on video if you want, or I'll pose for a photograph with you. And their whole thing was they wanted to ask, kind of like whether I was like a real person, whether I was a character or not on the internet, and why I'd go after people. Who was sending me after these. It was very weird, but a lot of these people, uh, they kind of like they get into these things with like Paul Joseph Watson and stuff like that, and they see this whole culture of criticizing people who they watch on a daily basis or having an opinion on them as like very unusual, and they see you as like a very unusual person, I suppose. Um, but they've all been amiable, and eventually this fellow, we parted ways, we shook hands, and he didn't want a photograph or anything like that, but uh, you know. Uh, he seemed fine. It was just very unusual. Um, so you're ashamed of your fans? Not really. It's just some of them I've had very weird interactions with, and this is another thing as well. This is what this fellow said to me. He said like I'd I'd become kind of known because I was the only one amongst like our community that would show my face, and I thought that was quite weird because obviously a lot of the cows that I've studied show their faces, but I suppose a lot of the people, who do like commentary stuff don't. So I suppose that's how you get known and stuff like that. But I don't know. People are reading cultural critique. No, no, they have no idea. They have no idea. They just think that Godwinson is like an anti-Sargon guy. I think who makes videos on lolcows. I think that's how. I think that's the kind of that's how far I've registered with these people. Would you get a drink with me if I ever went to the UK? Yeah, sure, sure. Um, yeah, I mean, look, you're always going to have awkward interactions with people who know you solely from the internet, who think that you're this like character. Um, but I'm always happy to play ball. Why don't you make videos in your old? You'll have to explain my old format. I don't know what you mean. I always make videos like this. I don't understand. What's your drink of choice? I like a gin and tonic. Um, I like a an IPA. I don't mind what, but I like an IPA. I don't like lager that much. But no, I like a wine. Do you have Discord or some shit? No, not really, not really. Do you keep up with the lesser known cows like Shirley of GM and Leah's Cool One? Do you mean do I continue like watching them? Yeah, I never stop. Um, these are your like journeyman cows. You'll never stop watching them. Warcorp 666 is one that I've watched since I was like 16, and that'll never die. Goldmanson, can Burgerland be redeemed? Is this America? Can America be redeemed? Um, I don't know. I watched a documentary on Netflix. I think it was called like Flint Town or something, and it was about police trying to maintain law and order in like these ethnically diverse uh, cities like Ferguson and stuff like that. Uh, and it was like watching a dystopian future of just how bad things have gotten. There's no redemption in places like that. In places like Chicago, I don't see how things can be that sort of thing can be redeemed without major law and order, and major money being invested into law enforcement there to try and stop things because there's no law of the land there. People are kind of it's like Mad Max basically. And I encourage everyone to watch that documentary and stuff like that. If you ever go to Cambridge, Goblinson, I recommend the Green Dragon pub. Tolkien used to drink there. Okay, yeah, I'll go there. Um, I miss your old Doctor Who memes. I don't think I ever did old Doctor Who memes. I watched the new series of it, the with the Lady Doctor Who. I watched all of those episodes actually, and I thought, I don't know, it's the show has always been pretty paused, I think. Um, but it was kind of interesting seeing that this is what they wanted. This is what your your SJWs and that sort of thing. This is what they wanted. They wanted like a female doctor. They wanted like stories about Rosa Parks and empowering her and that sort of thing. And it just all feels bland and flat. It feels like certainly that episode. It felt like I'd watched it before. It felt like I could have written it beforehand, and it would have been the exact same as what it came out as. I thought the best one in that. that kind of run. It was called It Takes You Away, and it ended on this like Pepe the Frog sitting on a chair talking to the female Doctor Who, about being in its own universe. And I felt the writers there had a hold on what they were commenting on 4chan culture, I think, and the alt right. I think that was one. Um, I haven't watched it in a while, so I have no effort to make them. Yeah, but I think what I mean, Doctor Who's always been shit, really. The best one was what David Tennant, and even if you go back and watch them, they're quite shit. Um, have you watched Tommy Tooter, aka Tranny Granny? No, I haven't seen this. This sounds fantastic. Though I'll bookmark this. Um, I, I've been watching Eggman a lot recently. A lot of his like newer stuff. He did like a I think he did a 4 hour live stream on his 27th birthday, and I watched that the other day, and it was quite shocking just to see it because he's drinking throughout it. And he's like Eggman is now a full blown alcoholic now. Even his like chances at finding love with trannies he meets on R9K, even they're dashed, and he's at a point now where he's just an alcoholic. Um, and that's what he'll die as, I think. Um, Everyone going, what? Yeah, the 11th episode of Series 11 had a parallel universe where a frog lived there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was that was my favorite of the run, really. I thought the worst one was the Rosa Parks one. There was an episode with like a pregnant man in it, and the pregnant man giving birth, and I just thought my eyes rolled so far back, um, that I grew dizzy and I fell to the floor, and it took me a while to get conscious again. Um, No, I thought that It Takes You Away one was all right. It was set in like Norway. It had this like blind girl in there, and her father had run away to be with this the ghost of her mother in this parallel universe with Pepe the Frog. It was a very surreal, trippy episode. It was quite good. Um, have you ever been on vacation in a third world country? Is it just me or are they overrated? I just don't get the appeal. Yeah, I have. I won't say where, but I had to have a lot of injections for it. A lot of vaccinations to go. Um, I didn't even touch the tip of the iceberg on the spending money I had, because obviously the English pound over there, over in these places, is just you know completely skewed. You can get a lot for your money over there, and it's not going to change. You're not going to really affect their economy too much, because you're going to restrict yourself because you can spend like a fiver and eat for the day, really. Now the pregnant man episode was the worst objectively. The New Year's Day one was really bad too. I missed this one, but I think I saw the end of it. It was like they built a Dalek out of um it was a Dalek one, wasn't it? And I saw the end where the lady doctor was like talking smack to it, and then it flew up and started like shooting the army or something. Like it just looked shit. I don't know. I mean, what do people expect? People talk to me about, oh, it used to be so good. There was a golden age of Doctor Who, and I say, well, you have to go back like 50 years to find out when it was good again. When it used to be good. It's always been shit. Um, a policeman was like, "I am gay, haha." So what did I just say? I'm gay. That's weird. And then he dies. Yeah. Yeah. Look, Doctor Who. What am I gonna say? Doctor Who's always been shit. Like I said, my favorite one is David Tennant, and I could probably count the best episodes of his on one hand. Uh, there's one with like angels, stone statue angels, which is really good, called Blink. There's a really good one called Human Nature, which is like scarecrows, and he's in the public school and he's had his mind wiped, and he teaches at the public school, and it ends on like this epitaph for World War One. It's quite a good episode. There's one where they're on like a train or a bus or something, and he has his voice stolen, and they're all talking like they're repeating each other. And there's like a woman with a really evil face in it. I haven't watched these since I was a kid, really. But the woman, there's like a woman with a really evil face, and she's like stealing his voice. I think it's called Midnight. Um, the fourth really good one I like is it's called Waters of Mars, and it's got like cracked face water zombies, which I thought that was quite good at the time. And there's one where meets a he meets Madame de Pompadour on a spaceship. It sounds quite weird, but I think the weirder ones are the better ones. Personally, I don't know, but I think it's always been quite shit, really. Midnight is my favorite episode. That's the voice. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Doctor Who: Age of Steel. I would blow Billy Piper. All right. Yeah. I don't really have. Eggy met his dad after being abandoned by him 25 years later, and they both find out they're both. Is this new? I've not seen this. No, I've not. I didn't realize Eggman had met his father. Like I say, I knew like he's had his 27th birthday. Uh, he's got a job now. He's quite stable, I think, but he's still doing these like Eggman live streams and that sort of thing. Uh, he's not been the same since 4chan memed him into this school shooter. Um, what are your favorite recurring? What are your favorite recurring villains in Doctor Who? I mean, what are the recurring villains? The Daleks? I don't know. Um, the Egg. Yeah, Eggman. He's met his father or something. I haven't. I don't know. I don't know. Right. I think it's Nigeria or somewhere that a lot of Brits go to vacation because of the exchange rate. Um, right. I don't know. A lot of people go to like East Asia. Um, the exchange rate's really good over there as well. But like I say, you have to take a load of injections, and it's not really you don't feel comfortable really, as long as you have to like stay in the hotel and not really go anywhere else. But your money's worth a lot over there. Eggman is disgusting and begs for donations to drink alcohol. He was also addicted to porn and was almost in porn films. He's an irony bro. Eggman's not an irony bro. Jesus, I think even the irony bros would shun. Mind you, if they'd accept Baked Alaska with open arms, maybe they would have Eggman. I'm not sure. Adam didn't travel far. UK is already a third world country. I Rommel, I watched a documentary the other week, and it was about this guy in Australia. It was like one of these true crime documentaries, on like trash TV, but it was a good watch. And this guy in Australia, he was telling the story about how he sold something on eBay. Um, no, he bought something on eBay or something, um, and it was like cash on collection. Pick this up. And he meets this guy and he talks to this guy, and this guy's like, "Yeah, you'll have to pick it up from my ranch in the outback somewhere, but you have to wear a blindfold because I value my privacy and I don't want anyone finding out where I am. And you have to like sit in the back of my car and stuff like that, and we'll drive there. It's like a 2 hour drive." And the guy bizarrely is like, "Yeah, okay, it's fine. Yeah, we'll go and pick this stuff up from your ranch. I'll just wear this blindfold." So he gets there, and um, the next thing he knows, he's like drugged up, and he wakes up in this room, and like everyone is like on a hook, like on a meat hook, and there's like 10 bodies there, um, and this guy's like being tortured and stuff like that, and he eventually finds like an opening and escapes, and he's like running, he's running through this desert, this outback, like dry, arid place for a few days, and this like passing police car picks him up. Um, and his like clothes all torn, he's like all bloodied and stuff like that. And this passing police car picks him up, and they go to this police station, and this guy tells him his story. Um, And the police are like, okay, even if we did believe you, which we're not sure of, even if this was true, do you realize how crazy? Well, do you realize how difficult it would be, first of all, for us to find this ranch? Because it's like finding a needle in a haystack. In The police officer said there's like 10 of us for like 100 miles of this wasteland almost, and there's no. It'd be like finding a needle in a haystack finding this thing. That's even if it was true. The guy was like, it's so true and stuff like that. And in this crime documentary, he's saying that there's a ranch out there. There's a farm out there somewhere where loads of these people are on hooks. This guy's doing this on a regular basis. He's doing it through eBay, and he's killing people. And no one, like the police, won't do anything because it'll cost too much money, and it's too much time and effort to try and find them because the place is so big. Enable super chats never. Um, he's on the weekly sweat a lot, or Eggman. As a resident, I agree. Uh, Goldmanson, what's the ideal English breakfast? I actually don't like the greasy bacon, sausage, egg, mushroom, bean abomination that everyone has. I just have cereal. I just think it's quite. I think it's too much early in the day when you wake up. Um, Are you dreaming about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? No, this was like a true crime documentary thing, like on trash TV. It was quite interesting. It was more interesting in the sense that the law enforcement had this apathy because it was Australia and they didn't have the resources to even try and track down this guy. So this guy can do what he wants. Sounds like he was at Rommel's house. He probably was. um, Gombardson, what's your opinion on the YouTube shooter Nasame? Is this the one that Monday Matt was blamed for? Um, is she the one that she shot them up because they took down her channel or something that had like 2,000 subs? I think it's the inevitable endpoint of these people who want to be celebs. I think they build themselves so much that they think they're being slighted when they lose their only outlet of success. So expect a lot of expect when this mass deplatforming happens this year. Expect a lot of crazies to take to the streets and start shooting up these Silicon Valley companies because and they won't necessarily be politically motivated. These will be people who have like Twitch channels and do unboxings on YouTube. They won't necessarily be politically motivated, but they've lost their entire lives, so they'll go and they'll fight for it, by ballot or bullet. Will you run for office? Never. Um, Aussie cops are binny running street peace. uh, will you compete against Sargon running for Swindon? If that happens, I'll be covering it. I'll do like a little documentary or something. I'll do an IRL. I'll get some people together and we'll film it. We'll harass Sargon. Uh, uh, how long do you think until Andy's luck runs out? How long do you think until Andy's luck runs out? I think it's. I mean, it's not there now, is it? Warski Live was the heyday, and now he's doing Warpath. I don't know if he's still with Cthulhu, but I don't know. I think people need to read these people if they want to stay on the internet and they want to have these quote unquote careers and avoid the real world and avoid getting an actual skill set. They need to like reinvent themselves pretty sharpish before they're completely deplatformed. Um, and they have no ability to make money on the internet ever again. Goldmanson, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sean Bailey Mosley style. Okay, thank you. Is this I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry. You'll have to like explain it and I'll give my opinion. Liberalist Beerhall Putch when two